Greetings, urban farmers, gardeners, and healthy food visionaries. Farmer Greg here, and welcome to the 608th episode of the Urban Farm Podcast, where every day we work together to educate and inspire you to become part of your food revolution. Water is one of the things we need multiple times a day. And as it gets hotter and drier, we need to become a lot more aware of where our water comes from and where it goes. Plus, when we're growing food, we're going to need to think about where we're getting our water from. People are surprised when they learn that I collect rainwater for my garden, even though I live in the desert of Phoenix, Arizona. What most people don't know is that you can harvest a lot of water. For example, it only takes 1 inch of rain on a 1,000 square foot collection area, such as the roof of your house, to collect 600 gallons of water. That's why you don't need to live in a wet place for water harvesting to be a viable self-sufficiency tool for your house and garden. If I can do it in Phoenix, then you can do it no matter where you are, especially if you live in a wetter place than where I do. Learning to harvest your own fresh water means you don't have to rely heavily on your area's municipal water supply. You can be in control of the inputs into your garden and stop watering your plants with chemically treated water. If you're ready to up-level your garden game and explore all the possibilities of harvesting water, you'll want to attend the Urban Farm U's upcoming online water harvesting summit this June 15th through the 17th. This 3-day event features visionary speakers sharing their expert knowledge on topics like rainwater harvesting, graywater harvesting, subsurface irrigation, building healthy soil to hold more water, and more. The 2021 Water Harvesting Summit is free to attend, and you're going to learn the best techniques for watering your garden and saving water. And I have a little surprise in store for you when you sign up. To reserve your spot in the summit, head over to waterharvestingsummit.com and get ready to create the self-sufficient life of your dreams. Today on our podcast, we have someone who is expanding farmers' reach to customers with busy schedules. We're talking with Jon Hayes about an online farmers marketplace. Jon is a software engineer and aspiring suburban farmer and the founder of locavore.co. Locavore is an online, hyperlocal, peer-to-peer food network where you can find freshly, locally grown produce, food services, opportunities, farm equipment, and more to buy, rent, sell, share, or trade. Welcome to the show today, Jon. Are you ready to rock?
I'm ready, Greg.
Awesome. So I shared a bit about you. Can you fill in the blanks for us and share more about the path you took to get where you're at today?
Sure thing, Greg. I'm super excited to talk to you today. So I just want to tell you, my wife's been a fan of your podcast for years. She's been listening to you, recently, but we're a little bit behind, and she's figured out how to listen at 1.5 speed on her iPhone.
Nice, yeah.
To squeeze more, more listening because we drive less these days thanks to the pandemic. So some of what we've learned from you and your guests that's helped shape our garden or farm, and I use that term loosely, has been relocating our planter boxes from far away at the back of our garden to being right outside our kitchen door. And it's a relief to hear that, your experts share that some things are easier to grow than others.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So we have, an abundance of lemons, papayas, lemongrass, squash, and, various herbs, but unfortunately no zucchini yet. That's going to be on our list for this year.
Good.
So yeah, as you said, I'm a software engineer and other things. I'm a parent, an aspiring suburban farmer. And as you can probably tell, I did grow up in the UK, but now I'm in Hawaii. It's a long story, but I'll spare you listeners.
Well, there you go.
So I've built everything from social networks to e-commerce platforms and applications. But, my most recent project, this locavore.co, is by far the most ambitious, exciting, and possibly most challenging.
Uh-huh.
And we're still working on naming our backyard farm with our kids, obviously. And, which we learned isn't important from your Jumpstart Your Urban Farm class.
So what is an online farming marketplace?
I've tried really hard to avoid using jargon, but, sometimes in the digital world, jargon's unavoidable. So the Locavore app is a hyperlocal online peer-to-peer marketplace. So when we talk about something being peer-to-peer, we're talking about anyone can be a seller and anyone can be a buyer. You don't have to be, a wholesaler. You don't have to have corporate accounts. You can literally go onto our platform, list your product, and then someone will reach out and either buy it or trade it or, reach out to you to help you source something from your environment. And kind of what we're trying to do is in the spirit of Locavore, is like feeding yourself, sourcing food as locally as possible. The greater term for the Locavore, it's a term that's coined in the Northeast, 2005 or so, which is sourcing food within 100 miles, and some people say up to 250 miles, as much as you can.
Right.
I don't, we're not religious. We're not zealot about just only eating local food. Don't get me wrong. Like, what we're trying to do is make it easier to source your food as locally as possible, as much as you can. It's not a world where we can, source everything completely locally. Like, we can't get French cheese here in Hawaii. We can't get other things. And certainly, like in California, you can't get locally grown coffee or...
They're actually working on that.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, there's definitely places, say you're up in Saskatchewan, you're not going to be able to find locally grown coffee in Saskatchewan unless you're growing it indoor, which is, going to be definitely a challenge, right? So, the problems that we're trying to solve are kind of twofold. So buyers like myself, we have limited time to go grocery shopping and even less time to source our local food. And then from the seller's perspective, local and aspiring farmers, people who are just starting out, either planting their garden or, want to leave their day job and want to start, their mini urban farm. And, it's one thing to go out and start planting things and go, right, I'm going to quit my job and become a farmer and grow tomatoes and sell them and I can make a living. So I see this opportunity where, local farmers like that may have inventory and scaling limitations.
Right.
So to selling at farmers markets, because like farmers markets is an expensive outlay of your weekly profit and your weekly growth.
Right.
And then beyond that, selling to restaurants who have strict rules on exactly how much they need to grow and how much they need to procure every week to keep their menus going. Because as a restaurant is known for growing certain things, unless you're Chez Panisse, which is, Alice Waters, she's religious, going out and sourcing local food on a weekly, daily basis.
Yeah.
And then scaling up that, wholesaling to supermarket chains, which makes it even harder on a small scale.
Right. The intro that I used for you said you have an app that's called Locavore, and it's online, so it's on your phone. Hyperlocal means that, you could actually be connecting with your neighbors. And then there's a term in here that I'm not so familiar with. It's called peer-to-peer. What does that mean?
Peer-to-peer is a method of being able to have, specifically in terms of an online marketplace, peer-to-peer is when you have a buyer and a seller and they're directly selling and buying between each other rather than having intermediaries such as a marketplace where say your supermarket, your big brand supermarket, buys wholesale and then sells it on at a major profit. Peer-to-peer means you're able to sell directly to the consumer. And as a consumer, you're able to buy directly from your farmer.
Awesome. And so this sounds like a great idea. And what motivated you? What was the piece that told you, oh my gosh, I got to do this?
So about 10 years ago, we had the idea to do something positive with food. Other online sharing marketplaces were still in an infancy and the idea hadn't spread throughout the world. And I'm sure many of you will know what I'm talking about. So fortunately for us, we started a family, and as life happens, things get put on a back burner. So fast forward to about a year ago, I wrapped up a contract that just happened to end at the end of March, And so we decided to revisit this idea of locavore. And as the saying goes, when life gives you lemons, don't just make lemonade, but make lemon bars.
Oh, nice.
So I have great ambitions for building, a platform, a peer-to-peer platform that fits into this gap of like helping us source more of our local food. We did plant our garden. As I said earlier, it's like we did plant our garden and we've been planting fruit trees, over the years, but we can't grow everything locally. And, I see our neighbors and they have fruit rotting on the ground.
Oh, yeah.
And, a lot of time we can't, there's no way to share that. And, in our 21st century life, we don't know all of our neighbors. So, if I can get everyone to use our app, or as many people as possible to use our app, it's going to be just that little bit easier to approach people to say, look, I've got too many, in our case, I've got too many bananas. Can I trade for some of your grapefruit?
Oh, yeah.
That's the simplest form of how we see, our app going forward.
When I'm sitting here thinking in my yard right now, today, I have 100 pounds of citrus that I could harvest, and I just don't know what to do with it. So I download your app, go to locavore.co, download the app, and I could list it there, right?
Absolutely. How
does that process work?
So, there's kind of three ways you can access our app. There's through the desktop version, on a regular web browser. There's also the two major app stores, through that iOS app store, the Apple App Store, and then the Android App Store. Those are the two official, dedicated mobile apps. So, for me, my eyesight's starting to fail me. So, once you hit that middle age, you start having to wear glasses and getting frustrated. I personally prefer to upload stuff on the desktop as a seller, just because it's slightly easier. But it is totally easy if you're adept and fast at using a phone to upload and list your product on our app. The first steps you have to do is get the app and then create an account, which is you just literally join now, enter your email address, create a password, verify it. You'll get an email part of the double opt-in. Make sure that you're not just some spammer. And that's the thing we take seriously on our platform, is that we do monitor as every listing to make sure we're not listing stuff that we don't want people listing.
Right.
You create the app, you create your account, and then you're going to take a photo of your product. You're going to find the right categories and the right section that it belongs in, and you're going to say whether it's something you want to share or trade, or whether it's something you want to actually sell, in which case you can put a price tag on it. And then, right now we're still very early stages. If you wanted to list your product for sale and take payment offline, that's fine. If, your local regulations prohibit you from actually selling online, you can take the payment in person. And if you want to or are able to sell online, you can create your PayPal. You can add your PayPal Pro account.
Oh, very good.
And take payment online that way up front. And, we do encourage people to offer that payment online, because it makes it simpler for the end user to actually make that purchase. And it also guarantees you as a seller payment in advance. So you're not wasting your time reaching out to that customer and then making an arrangement to go and deliver that product if you're offering delivery, which is another thing that we're offering the users, the sellers and the buyers in our app, is a facility for people to be able to make their order, make arrangement with delivery.
Oh, nice.
And take payment.
I guess there's several food delivery apps out there that you could partner with, I would think, right?
Absolutely. We would love to partner with any of the other food delivery platforms going forward.
Nice. And how is it being received? And where are you, because you were in Hawaii, but it's an app, so it can be used all over the world in theory.
In theory, yes, it can work absolutely everywhere. Right now, the currency system strictly works with US dollars, but there's no reason why you can't transact in US dollars everywhere else in the world currently. For future growth, we would like to internationalize this platform for different locales where we think it's going to work. as far as translation goes, that's another thing we're going to work on for other languages.
Right. That's always a challenge in software development. As we talked before we started recording, I was in software development. I owned a software company in the early days of computers from 1986 to 2003 or so. And so I have a pretty good understanding of what it takes to develop something like this. So good work.
Thanks.
And what kind of difference do you see it making for our local food systems?
So the way I think that Locavore is going to help us is that if everybody grows one ingredient and puts in that becomes invested in what they're growing,
Mm-hmm.
then we can all forces us to start thinking about, how the next level of how we're going to get that next local ingredient.
Mm-hmm.
So, if we would like to get other, probably we're working with other more established farms, locally here in Kona who may not have already had an online presence.
Uh-huh.
And it makes it easier. I think it makes it easier to source our food as locally as possible.
Yeah. Well, if you had an app that you could go to and say, hey, I need peppers, and it pops up and, Susie, at so-and-so farm over there is growing peppers, you can connect and get them.
Absolutely.
Nice. And do you have any success stories, epic examples of how this has improved somebody's interactions? How is it being received?
So far, it's been, we've reached out to our local rancher who, during the pandemic, they were, as everyone was, struggling because farmers markets had shut down.
Right. And
there wasn't, and especially in Hawaii, we have, a strictly tourism reliant economy.
Uh-huh.
So a lot of most of the farms that are growing here cater to, hospitality and the restaurant industry.
Mm-hmm.
So we gave, our platform opened up an extra sales channel for our local ranch, and that's like within 20 miles of our house. And I had no idea that we had a local ranch until I stumbled across them on a Facebook group.
Uh-huh.
So, I was able to connect with that owner, and they actually had a success story out of COVID in that they've been able to, increase their reach for, selling meat products.
Nice. Locavore isn't just about food. It's about other opportunities. Maybe I've got a job, or I need to have a job done, or I want to find some work. It's maybe selling farm equipment, really anything to do with food production, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So we're so much more than just a marketplace for selling food. We're trying to make it a platform for the entire food ecosystem. So, for instance, the use cases, you could say you're an expert landscaper or foodscaper is a category or term that we coined here on Locavore. So you could list your expertise in helping people redesign their imported landscaping plants into a sustainable food landscape. So foodscaping is one thing one could sell as a service. Say perhaps like you have a side press. Side presses are not a cheap piece of equipment, but say you have an apple tree and you grow apples. Maybe you could list your apple press as something you could rent out, and then someone could rent that apple and they could make cider.
Right. I actually have one of those, an apple crusher and an apple press that sits doing nothing 364 days a year.
Yeah, so that's what I'm talking about. That's the kind of equipment where it's like much more than, a piece of equipment that you would have just sitting, you would just go out and buy, but something that you desperately want to use maybe 1 or 2 days a year to do your run of apples and turn them into cider, and then ultimately into hard cider.
Yeah. And additionally, I heard you say that people can list services on there. So one of the things that I do is I do garden urban farm consults for people on the phone. So I could then actually list that.
You absolutely could. And you can list it either as an hourly contracted rate through our application, or you can have it using your other, Eventbrite or however you want to do it, whatever other platforms you been using in the past.
Wow. What other kinds of things are you seeing people buy, sell, and trade?
So we've had people sell fish. So in Hawaii, there's a lot of fishermen, so you can, the commercial fishermen. We had a lot of fishermen were having a lot of downtime during the pandemic.
Uh-huh.
So they've been selling their fish through our app. We've had people selling their micro CSA box, especially in between the farmer market days during the week. And this is another great thing about our app, is that you can arrange that delivery and you can make that sale 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Make that sale, make that connection, and then you can keep operating your marketplace business every day.
Wow. Well, that's cool. Are you loving this?
Yeah. There's one more thing I wanted to mention. When you're traveling as an eco-conscious food traveler or eco-conscious vacation renter, you can bring your app with you on your smartphone and help you source your local ingredients. This is something that I know that the younger generation, they're always on their phones. Even my small kids, they're obsessed with their devices. It's absolutely, a thing that kids are doing these days. And I think that, being able to source your local food wherever you are is something that I think people are going to be super jazzed about.
Awesome. Well, good job, man.
Thanks.
Yeah. I'm going to shift on you now, and I'd like for you to talk about a time you failed, how you overcame that failure, and what you learned from it.
We don't talk about failure. As you know, that's not a thing. That's something we do everywhere. We don't talk about failure. We just talk about learning experiences.
Oh, very good.
So if I had one thing that, talk about one thing, it would not be starting sooner. I wish that I had started sooner on this application, because, I think that we could all be growing things more. I would have focused more on maintaining, moving our garden into the right places.
Yeah.
I wish I'd started sooner listening to your podcast, Greg. You've been a total inspiration for us.
Thank you.
And then, which brings me back to, another thought I had, which was, this whole process of talking with you has been a good kick in the pants for us. We actually planted our tangerine tree this past weekend, so we're getting closer to having more of our own produce.
Yeah.
As they say, carpe diem, seize the day.
Yeah, awesome. And what do you consider your biggest success?
Well, I know it's going to sound cheesy, but honestly, it's our kids.
Uh-huh.
I'm so proud of my eldest, because he's already started showing interest in cooking and making food, and I'm not just talking about baking cookies. He cooks us dinner. He's
Wow.
just turned 9 years old.
Oh.
He saves family for dinner. This is awesome. So honestly, he's my pride right now. And then my youngest child, he's 5 years old.
Uh-huh.
He helps us regularly make our fresh pasta. I know we can't get wheat here in Hawaii, so we can't get our semolina flour. So I know that has to be important. But the ingredients we can get here locally are local fresh eggs from.
Oh, yes.
We get our eggs from a food seller just up the street. She has chickens. Our subdivision, we're not allowed to have livestock, so it is what it is.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, so we get eggs from a local micro farm up the street, in another road. And, when we can't get them there, we get them from our local CSA. That's great. So we make our own pasta from scratch.
Nice.
And our 5-year-old loves doing it. It's super fun.
Awesome.
In fact, there's usually fighting over who gets to help.
Gotta love that. And what drives you?
So, as I said, my kids, they're my motivating factor in my life. I want to make sure they grow up eating healthily.
Mm-hmm.
Not just in terms of what they eat, but also how they source their food. It's so important. And the impact we have on the planet. Things like the very simplest activity we as humans do multiple times a day, which is eat. That's if we can figure out how to eat healthfully, sustainably, and eco-consciously, I think that we can save the planet going forward. It all starts with what we eat. It starts in the kitchen. It's all part of that big circle of life.
That's the big reason I do what I do. And I don't have kids. I'm 60 years old. I chose not to have kids. But the reason I do it is for the future generations, for your kids. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing, because it's what needs to be done.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have so much respect for the likes of, Greta Thunberg. I think she's awesome.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I think she's also an inspiration for us all. And, as grown-ups, we all need to listen to her. She's right on the money.
Right, yeah. If you could recommend one book for our listeners, what would it be and why?
So I have a great book. It's called Jamie Oliver's 5 Ingredients. It's actually a recipe book.
Uh-huh.
I've been a big fan of his programming. He started off as a TV chef. I'm sure many of your listeners know him. He's a British UK based TV chef. And this book's become my go-to for cooking healthy, delicious meals that take under 20 minutes, like from, using fresh ingredients.
Uh-huh.
So, and a lot of those ingredients you can source locally wherever you are, So, like, for example, we, just like yesterday, we had his lemony mint zucchini pasta. So I was able to source the lemons and the mint from my garden. Unfortunately, I don't have zucchini yet. We have a bug that attacks the zucchini, and it's very hard to grow here in Hawaii. But we're going to try. I swear we're going to try this year. And as I said, we, make pasta with our local eggs. So, probably a third of our meal was locally sourced. That's, he makes it so easy.
You said only a third of your meal was locally sourced. I don't know that many people can actually say that. So that's a third of your meal, oh my gosh, yes, is locally sourced.
Yes.
Nice. What one final piece of advice do you have for our listeners?
So my advice is try and make every dinner with at least one item you've grown or sourced within walking distance of your home.
Yes.
Just try it. See if you can do it. I think it's a great challenge. I think that, if you can do that, maybe we can all start growing one more thing wherever you are. Like if you're in an apartment building, grow some herbs on the windowsill. If you have a garden, dedicate some of that land to growing something. Don't just focus on, ornamentals. Like grow something delicious.
Yeah, awesome.
Just one homegrown ingredient is a reason to celebrate.
Yeah, oh, big time. Yeah, we eat out of our yard every single day, pretty much year round. So I'm in. Good job today. Thanks for joining us.
Awesome. Thank you, Greg.
How can our listeners find you guys?
You can reach us mainly at the website through locavore.co. We have links that go out to our social media channels. We're at the Locavore CO on Facebook and Instagram. You can find our Facebook page, the locavore.co. But yeah, most importantly, go to the website, sign up, download the apps.
Yes.
Join our app platform. List just one item, and maybe we can make the world a better place.
Nice. And you can also find show notes from today's podcast at urbanfarm.org/Locavore app.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Urban Farm Podcast. Remember to listen for tips, advice, and resources to help you on your journey with urban farming. You can find us on the web at urbanfarm.org or send us an email to podcast@urbanfarm.org. In the words of Vincent van Gogh, great things are done by a series of small things brought together. Be encouraged that with each lesson learned and skill developed, you are one step closer in the direction of your dreams.